Welcome to Game of Thrones Season 4 Crammed. You guys know the score by now, let's go. Tywin has Ned Stark's Valyrian steel sword melted down to make 2 new Lannister blades, having won the war against the North. One goes to Jaime along with a new haircut who he hopes will inherit Casterly Rock, but Jaime is going to remain a member of the Kingsguard and keep his vows. He gets a new golden hand courtesy of Cersei, but he's not getting any incest action while she's mad at him for being away. Noble guests are coming up from Dorne. There's some bad blood with the Martells and Tyrion is out to greet them, but Prince Oberyn of Dorne is already in King's Landing with his paramour, trying out the girls and the boys and stabbing the Lannisters. Poor Tyrion is going to have his hands full. You see, although invited up for Prince Joffrey's wedding, Oberyn's really here for revenge against Sir Gregor Clegane for killing his sister back when the Targaryens lost the throne, and Tywin for giving the order. Dany's dragons are getting bigger and boisterous, and with her massive army on tour, Grey Worm and Daario are getting along. He's played by this guy now, but nobody notices the change and Dany's starting to fancy him. Next city along on a slave liberation tour is Meereen, the greatest and worst of the slaver cities, and they've crucified slaves every mile along the road to send Dany a welcome message. Sansa is still a bit sore about the slaughter of her family and Tyrion is unable to console her, so he continues to bang Shae on the backup but is terrified at her getting caught. With Jon escaped, the wildlings change up their game plan and get more reinforcements from over the wall. These are the Fens, real nasty bastards that like to eat people. Things aren't perfect at Castle Black either. Janos Slynt, the scumbag Tyrion had exiled to the Watch, sits on the board with Alistair Thorne, and they accuse Jon of being an oathbreaker and turncloak for killing the half-hand and banging Ygritte. They simply don't believe that the wildlings could be organised enough to march as an army on the wall, but do take note when he warns of a raiding party that are supposed to take Castle Black from the rear. The Tyrells in King's Landing prep for the wedding, and Olenna loves the sight of a powerful woman like Brienne of Tarth, who's come to explain that Stannis was responsible for the death of her first husband, Renly. Jaime is back in charge of the Kingsguard, and Joffrey manages to pay no respect at all and give his Uncle Daddy shit for being captured and losing a hand. The more we get to know Jaime, the more he actually seems to have values. Although he does have to explain to Brienne that there's no point in returning Sansa to the north now that all of her family are dead. Sir Dontos the Drunk, who Joffrey wanted killed in Season 2, gives Sansa a family necklace for acting to save his life. And on the road, Arya and the Hound come across Polliver and his men, the guy who stole her sword Needle and killed the other people she was with when heading for the Watch. They belong to the Hound's brother, Sir Gregor Clegane, and are real scumbags who live for torturing the innocent. The tension mounts until the Hound powerhouses his way through the lot of them in a desperate and bloody brawl, outthinking and outfighting each in turn. Arya goes in for a slow stab on one of them before taking down Polliver and recounting his last words to her before a really creepy stab through the neck. Cool, I guess? Ramsay Snow and his psycho girlfriend are hunting down women for sport with Reek in tow. While the dogs tear her apart, the broken man that used to be Theon looks on in fear. Roose Bolton returns to the Dreadfort with Locke and his new Frey wife, and warns his bastard son not to get too big for his boots. But Ramsay proves just how tame and broken his new pet really is. With the information from their captive, Roose sends Locke to the wall to hunt down Bran and Rickon, and tells Ramsay to retake Moat Cailin from the Ironborn using Reek. Jaime confides in his brother about his fears of not being a fighter anymore, so Tyrion has Bronn train up his left hand in secret as a test of his perseverance. It's a day of Joffrey and Margaery's wedding, and in the pre-wedding gift presentations, Tyrion gives Joff an ancient Book of Kings, which he promptly cuts to pieces with his new Valyrian sword. If Shae is discovered to be Tyrion's whore, she'll be killed, and the risk now is too great without the distraction of war. So Tyrion has her sent away to live a comfortable life across the narrow sea, breaking both of their hearts. Apparently. The Lannisters and Tyrells unite their power through the royal wedding, and it's a packed, stately affair with a very extravagantly planned after-party full of all sorts of entertainment. Olenna adjusts Sansa's hair and that necklace Dontos gave her, except one of the gems appears to be missing. Joffrey is sour and rude, Cersei is horrible to Brienne for getting close to Jaime, and Prince Oberyn steps all up in Tywin's grill for a bit. So then Joffrey has a dwarf show put on all about the War of the Five Kings, and this manages to offend pretty much everybody present, especially Tyrion and Sansa. Joffrey goads Tyrion into joining the fools, and Tyrion negs him in front of the crowd. So he pours some wine over his uncle and makes him be his cupbearer for the rest of the wedding, shaming him as much as possible. Saved by the pie. But all of a sudden Joffrey starts choking worse and worse. The people start panicking and Sir Dontos suddenly removes Sansa from the scene. In Cersei's arms, Joffrey chokes horribly to death, really spoiling the wedding, and the finger is pointed at Tyrion, who is seized. Dragonstone. Melisandre continues to burn traitors alive at the stake, and Stannis' wife is totally into it. Over dinner he doesn't have much love for his zealot missus, and Melisandre pops in on Princess Shireen to explain why it's totally cool to burn one of her uncles because their old religions are wrong and the war between the dark and light is coming. So yeah, sweet dreams, love. North of the wall, Bran is spending a little too much time in the body of his direwolf, and Jojen warned him to cut that back a bit before he forgets his human self. He has one of his strongest visions yet when he touches a weirwood tree and knows the way they must go to find the three-eyed raven. Sansa is snuck out of the harbour by Ser Dontos, and in the middle of the night is taken to Peter Baelish on board a ship out to sea. To her horror, Littlefinger has the drunk killed. He's been involved in Joffrey's death and is going to get Sansa taken away to the Vale. Olenna tells Margaery to keep her chin up despite losing another king husband because she can just move along one and marry his brother Tommen next in line. Over Joff's dead body, Tywin wastes no time and starts to school gentle Tommen in the ways of ruling well. Cersei just has to deal with her grief whilst they chat shit about the former monster until Jaime comes for a visit. Cersei believes Tyrion killed the boy and begs Jaime to kill their own brother. And then Jaime bangs her right over the body of their dead son in the middle of the sept. The only real relatives left to sell Arya back to is our Aunt Lysa. So the Hound plans to take her up to the Eyrie, and en route they lie to a farmer about fighting for Riverrun. He offers to have them stay on as a guard and help her for a little bit of silver, but instead the Hound mugs him, and off they go. Up at Castle Black, Sam worries about Gilly being the only woman surrounded by guys. He finds her work down at Molestown for her own safety, but everybody there is horrible. And now with Joffrey dead, it seems that Melisandre's magic had worked. But Stannis has no real army left to take advantage of the opportunity. Davos suggests hiring sellswords from across the Narrow Sea, and during a reading lesson with Shireen, plans to borrow money from the Iron Bank of Braavos. Prince Oberyn is back to having sex with everyone until Tywin visits and invites him to be a judge over Tyrion's trial. He also offers him a position on a small council because he wants Dawn to join the Lannisters against the Greyjoy rebellion and solidify the kingdom against the rumoured Targaryen girl with dragons across the sea. Pod sneaks Tyrion some food in prison and confirms there's been no word of Shae since he had her sent away. He's innocent of Joffrey's poisoning and has no idea where Sansa has gone, but Tyrion tells Pod to leave the city before the people behind this plot have him killed for being so loyal. The wildlings raid another village along with the Fens, who explain they're going to eat this kid's parents before they send him off to Castle Black, who almost take the bait at being drawn out and killed off, but Fawn and Jon know better. Two loyal brothers make it back from the mutineers at Craster's Keep. Those traitors, however, must be killed before Mance Rayder's army comes across them and learns just how weakly defended Castle Black is. Dany reaches the gates of Meereen, where they send out one of their champions to berate and mock her. Everybody in her crew would like the honour of killing him, but it's Daario she sends out. He's less fancy than a mounted champion and simply kills his horse before beheading him. Dany then sends a message, not to the masters of Meereen, but to the slaves, suggesting they rise up and join her. Then Grey Worm leads an undercover Unsullied team into the city at night dressed as slaves, in order to spread the idea of freedom and rebelling against their masters inside Meereen. Come dawn, the plan works, and Dany is the new ruler of a city that has essentially conquered itself. To prove a point about injustice, she has the wise masters crucified in the same way as the slaves en route to the city, and reigns as queen from atop the Great Pyramid. Jaime is getting slightly less shit with his left hand during the practice sessions with Bronn, who suggests that he go talk with his brother. So they have a catch up, and Jaime also believes in Tyrion's innocence, but he's definitely going to be proved guilty at the trial. On the ship to the Vale, Littlefinger explains about the poison at Joffrey's wedding that was hidden in the necklace given to Sansa and administered by Olenna Tyrell. Olenna counsels Margaery to make a move on seducing Tommen ASAP before his mother turns the boy against them, so she slips into the prince's room at night to win the boy over and stroke the cat. That's not a metaphor. Jon trains some new recruits, including the boy who escaped the wildling massacre on his village, and among this lot is Bolton's hunter Locke, who lies about who he is whilst on the search for Bran and Rickon. Jon is sent to take care of the scum up at Craster's Keep with a team of volunteers, both to stop them from giving vital info to Mance Rayder and as revenge for killing Mormont, and Locke also elects to go with them. The scumbag traitors are led by Carl, a cutthroat from King's Landing who's now drinking wine from Commander Mormont's skull, so you definitely know he's a bad guy. And while Craster's wives continue to get raped, they do advise him to keep giving their babies over to the others. Bran's group aren't that far away and get captured when they go over for a look. Jojen's not holding up so well, and Carl discovers their identities and keeps them hostage. Meanwhile, on a dead horse, a White Walker returns to the far north and the lands of Always Winter with Craster's offered baby, and it's there the Night's King emerges to turn him into one of them. Cersei's drinking all the time now and angry and suspicious at everyone. She's still convinced Tyrion killed her son despite what Jaime has to say, so he gives his Valyrian steel sword to Brienne. With Sansa gone, he urges Brienne to find and keep her safe from Cersei. He also gets her some sweet armour and a squire in the form of Podrick. She names the sword Oathkeeper, and the bonded pair part ways. Tommen is crowned the new king, and as a much more malleable boy, it's a battle between Margaery and Cersei to see who will actually have control over him. News of Joffrey's death reaches Dany and Meereen, and with the fleet that she's taken, she could attack King's Landing. But it would be a gamble, and she further discovers that Yunkai, the last city that she freed, has been taken over again without the Unsullied there to stop them. And in that first city, Astapor, the council she left has been overthrown by a new butcher king. So instead of leaving, she wants to prove a point about being a good ruler and make a solid change in Slavers Bay. Dany's going to stay in Meereen and rule. Peter makes his way back to the Vale with Sansa in order for her to stay with her aunt Lysa. Baelish and Lysa are set to wed, and it turns out she's been hot for him for a long time, and in fact she was the one to poison her own husband, the previous Hand of the King that Ned was called down to replace. All of this being part of Littlefinger's plotting, which essentially led to the war between the North and the South. In fact, Lysa is so crazy eager about him, she has a Septon waiting right there to marry them immediately. So Sansa tries to get a good night's sleep to the sound of them banging. Unfortunately, as well as being background crazy, Lysa is also jealous of Sansa for her youth and looks and the fact that she's had Peter's attention. Tywin confides in Cersei that the Crown's debt to the Iron Bank of Braavos is incredible, and they need the Tyrells and their money to help pay some of it back. Princess Marcella is still down in Dorne, so Cersei asks Oberyn to have a gift sent to her, a new ship that she's had built. Arya says the names of all the people she wants to kill before she goes to sleep now, and the next morning she's practicing her water dancing technique she learnt in King's Landing. The Hound thinks that's hilarious and drives home the point that over here in Westeros it's better to have armour and a big sword. Locke scouts ahead of Jon's hit squad to check on Craster's Keep, but keeps quiet about Bran and co being captive. Jojen is having visions of where they really need to go, and it's the same great weirwood tree that Bran has seen. Just before Carl can rape Mira, Jon leads the attack on the Turncloaks, and Locke shows his true colours, slipping away to kidnap Bran. However, he wargs Hodor to chase him down and break his neck. And so Bran's group watches on as Jon takes on the rest of the crowd, but Jojen won't let them meet. Bran must head north to meet the Three-Eyed Raven and leave Jon to his own fate. He takes on Carl the Cutthroat and almost loses before one of Craster's wives intervenes, and Jon gets in a good long face stab. The last one escapes only to be killed by Ghost, who reunites with Jon. They burn down the keep and all of the daughter wives go their separate way. Stannis sails with Davos over to the city of Braavos to ask the Iron Bank for a loan to pay for an army. They respectfully decline, but Davos points out they're not likely to get their money paid back by the Lannisters, whereas Stannis is an honest man who could pay the Crown's debt if he was in charge. So now Davos is flush enough to hire back Salador San and his fleet. Yara has arrived with her Ironborn commandos to sneak up on the Dreadfort and rescue Theon. While Ramsay is boning his crazy girlfriend, they find Reek sleeping with the dogs. She tries to save him, but this is a completely broken man who's too scared to come. Ramsay fights them off and Reek struggles back into his cage. Yara declares her brother dead and escapes, whilst Reek gets given a bath as a reward for being a good pet. Ramsay wants him to pretend to be Theon again so that he can help take back Moat Cailin from the rest of the encamped Ironborn. Over at Meereen, the dragons have a habit of burning and eating goats, which Dany is compensating the farmers for. The overthrown masters petition her to allow them to bury their relatives that she had crucified, and she realises that ruling might be harder than just conquering. In King's Landing, Tyrion's trial begins. He's to be judged by his father Tywin, Prince Oberyn, and Margaery Tyrell's father, who's not important. Sir Meryn, Pycelle, Varys, Cersei, and more recount twisted versions of the various times Tyrion stepped up to Joffrey or threatened them directly before they all adjourn for lunch. It's really not looking good for Tyrion. Jaime is angry at Tywin for allowing Cersei to manipulate the whole thing and making such a farce out of the trial, so he offers to leave the Kingsguard and rejoin the family as Tywin's heir if he spares his brother's life and lets him join the Night's Watch. Jaime begs Tyrion to plead for mercy and live, and out of trust for his brother, Tyrion agrees. That is until Shae turns up. Instead of far away to safety, she's been called forward and gives a false testimony about Sansa and Tyrion plotting together to kill Joffrey. She recounts warped tales of them together and breaks Tyrion's heart with a betrayal. So he turns on the highborn crowd, wishing he was the monster they all painted him to be. He can't trust his life to any of them and demands a trial by combat. Jaime can't fight for Tyrion with just his left hand, and it turns out Cersei is naming the Mountain as her champion, who is passing the time by killing poor people. Bronn visits, but he's been paid off and given a good marriage position. The Sellsword is a hell of a killer, but Gregor Clegane is something else altogether, and not worth a risk. Then Oberyn also comes for a visit. He wants his own justice too. The Mountain is a man who killed Oberyn's sister, and he's going to use the trial by combat to stand as Tyrion's champion and seek revenge. Arya and the Hound come across more scenes of a pillaged land and victims of war. The Hound shows her where the heart is, and after an attack from these two, she proves she's learnt the lesson. The Hound won't let her burn away the corruption on his wound, however, and tells of how his brother the Mountain forced his face into the fire as a child. Jon and the hit team return to Castle Black with Ghost, and Alistair Thorne isn't glad to see him still alive. Daario keeps doing cheeky things, and despite herself, Dany loves it. So, seeing as he can't go off killing her enemies now that they're staying in Meereen, he gets to bang her instead. The next morning, poor Ser Jorah passes him on the way out. Dany wants to take a hard stance and have Daario and his second sons head back to Yunkai and slay every wise master in the city. Jorah pleads for her not to simply massacre people, and she consents to send an envoy instead, telling them to give up on the ways of slavery. Brienne and Podrick continue to search for Sansa and come across Hot Pie now working as a cook. No news on Sansa, but he does explain that Arya is alive somewhere and gives them a pie. Brienne decides to head towards the Vale of Arryn to see if either of the girls have tried to make for their Aunt Lysa. Sansa builds a snow Winterfell up at the Eyrie, and Robin the Weakling is now set to be her husband. But he's a petulant kid that gets a good slap and runs off. Peter explains he's only ever loved Sansa's mother Catelyn before he steps in for a kiss. But Lysa sees him and later goes mental on Sansa in a jealous rage. Baelish manages to calm her down a bit just before he pushes her straight out of the Moondor himself. Gilly is still housekeeping in Molestown with the awful whores when Tormund and the rest of the wildlings attack and kill everyone to pass the time. Ygritte, however, spares Gilly's life for the sake of a baby. And outside Moat Cailin, Ramsay Snow the Bastard preps his pet Reek to look like Theon again and sends him in as their Ironborn prince to command the other Krakens here to surrender. The commander here almost sees Reek as a broken man he really is, but the men are sick and desperate to go home and open the gates. Ramsay of course lied about safe passage and has the men flayed. With most of the Ironborn out of the north, Roose Bolton congratulates Ramsay for his work and legitimizes him as his son and heir to the north as reward. His Dreadfort men now occupy Winterfell. The Lords of the Vale have all come to grill Peter on exactly what happened to Lady Lysa Arryn. They all knew that she was weird but don't quite believe his tales of suicide. However, Littlefinger has prepared Sansa to spin the story and the others are convinced. So now Peter is pretty much Lord of the Vale via Robin. Grey Worm gets an eyeful of Melisandre and later apologises for the intrusion in a side story that's probably not going to go anywhere useful, and Sir Barristan receives a letter revealing that Ser Jorah used to be a spy for the Baratheons. It's terrible news and Dany banishes him from the city for the sake of their friendship before she changes her mind and has him killed. It's a horrible blow for Ser Jorah. Arya and the Hound share notes on killing people as they reach the Vale, but they're stopped at the bloody gate. Lady Arryn's death means that once again the Hound has missed the opportunity to ransom the girl off. It's the day of the trial by combat. Oberyn is known as the Red Viper of Dawn and relaxed about killing the mountain that is Clegane. Everyone is out to watch the show and Oberyn is fast and quick where Gregor is big and powerful. During the acrobatic fight he forces a confession out of the mountain for raping and killing his sister as he slowly wears the man down. But Oberyn makes the mistake of playing with his food and the mountain pops his head like a watermelon. Ugh. The combat decided, Tyrion is sentenced to death. After delaying all season long, the wildlings finally prepare to attack Castle Black. Ygritte is still real sore about Jon and not getting along with the Fens, whilst Gilly makes her way back to the castle ahead of the raiders to reunite with Sam. Mance Raider's army set fire to half the forest as a signal to the wildlings south of the wall. The brothers of the Night's Watch prepare their defence plans to fight on two fronts, and Sir Alistair Thorne and Jon temporarily put aside their hate for each other to deal with the bigger issue. The wildling army emerges from the forest. 100,000 men, giants and mammoths get the attention of the fighters on the wall, but the immediate danger is the attack from the rear. Thorne goes down to rouse the men in defence of the castle and a grim fight ensues. Ygritte keeps shooting down brothers in black with deadly skill, and Sam kills a Fen whilst more brothers head down to help hold the gate. Janos Slynt is useless up on the wall, so he heads down to hide with Gilly, and Jon is left in charge to take action to help defend the gate against the giants and their powerful bow skills. They drop barrels down on the attackers, but the giants rig up a mammoth to the outer gate to pull it open. A few barrels of flaming pitch however solve that problem, but the one remaining giant king forces open the outer gate and charges the men inside. Heading down, the battle continues and Jon fights the leader of the Fens whilst Ygritte watches on. It's a tight thing and he barely wins, only to see his woman again. And she hesitates at killing him, only to be shot by the orphan boy from the village they slaughtered earlier. You know nothing, Jon Snow. The last of the wildlings are killed and Tormund is taken captive. On the wall, the climbers are obliterated and the first wave of the attack is repelled for the night. The gate was held, but at great cost. With Slynt in hiding and Alistair Thorne injured, there's no one around to give orders. And in the gloom of dawn, Jon knows that they'll keep getting attacked until the wildlings eventually win. Ygritte's death has made him die on the inside, so his plan is to head out to the wildling army and kill Mance Rayder himself, hopefully throwing the rest of the army into disarray and back to fighting among themselves. Jon doesn't plan on making it back. He walks straight in amongst the wildlings and meets with their king. They drink to Ygritte and their fallen friends, and Mance explains he must get his people to the southern side of the wall before they're all killed by White Walkers. All of a sudden war horns start blaring. It's not an attack by the Watch, but thousands of mounted men come out of nowhere and storm the wildling encampment. Organised and armoured knights cut through the wildlings under the banner of a fiery heart. Stannis Baratheon has come to respond to the Watch's plea for help. The king beyond the wall surrenders to Stannis, but does not kneel, and Jon greets the Baratheon king and tells him that his father Ned died supporting his claim to the throne, urging him not to kill Mance and also to burn all of the dead. Over the funeral pyre, Melisandre takes a keen interest in Jon from across the flames, but he builds a solitary pyre himself to burn Ygritte north of the wall. Despite winning the combat, the Mountain was horribly wounded and poisoned. But Qyburn claims there are some off-the-book methods for keeping people alive, and Cersei lets him take over Pycelle's lab. She then tells Tywin that the rumours of her banging Jaime have been true all along, and that she'll admit it to the world unless he lets her off from marrying Loras Tyrell. Then has sex with her brother again for good measure. In Meereen, many of the older slaves don't know how to adapt to the imposed culture change and are looking to be allowed to work again for their masters. Another supplicant appears to approach for the sake of her dragons eating his sheep, but it's much worse. One of them has killed a child. It's a horrible decision for Dany, but in order to protect her people, she leads two of her dragons into the old fighting pits of Meereen where she has them chained up. They never managed to catch the third one, Drogon. Further north still, Hodor and the Reeds drag Bran on and discover the Great Weirwood Tree from their visions. They're ambushed at the last step by skeleton wights, and Bran wargs Hodor to help. Jojen is killed, however, just before a childlike figure emerges and fireballs the rest of the dead. They make it to the cave where the dead cannot enter and discover they've been helped by a child of the forest, an ancient race lost to legend. And in the huge cave amongst the roots and bones, they meet the three-eyed raven at last, an ancient figure that plans to teach Bran the ways of old magic. In secret, Jaime releases Tyrion from his cell. They say their goodbyes, but Tyrion has unfinished business. He sneaks into the Tower of the Hand where he finds Shae naked in his father's bed. Totally betrayed, he strangles her to death, the whore that he was a fool for loving. In for a penny, in for a pound. He takes a crossbow to the privy where Tywin is, and after lamenting their relationship, shoots his father before Varys sneaks him out of King's Landing in a box. Brienne randomly finds Arya, who by now is just weird with a dead look in her eyes. Clegane and Brienne do not get on, and Arya's not interested in what she's got to say. So a fight kicks off, first by sword and then by more rough and desperate measures as it goes on. Eventually Brienne punches a hound off the side of a cliff and leaves. He's alive, but totally fucked, and urges Arya to cross his name off her list and finish him. But she says nothing, steals his purse and leaves. She finds a ship to Braavos where she shows the captain the iron coin Jaqen H'ghar gave her, and with no family left she seeks the faceless men and starts her voyage across the narrow sea. Oh my god. So Tyrion has killed Tywin and fled the capital, Joffrey is dead and Tommen is king. Stannis has saved the Watch from the wildling attack, but Ramsay and the Boltons control the north. Sansa is hiding in the Vale of Arryn, and Arya leaves Westeros to find the assassins. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed having Game of Thrones Season 4 crammed inside of you. Putting these things together takes ages, so don't forget to like, subscribe and tell me what you thought about this season in the comments below. You guys really are the best. See you next time.